Chapter 56. In a rather spacious living room, Anna and Joyce were seated on different sofas, separated by Anna's parents. Joyce sighed with a satisfied expression and said, "Exalted steam. I am so lucky to come back alive, to be able to see Anna again. My poor Joyce, what happened?" Anna couldn't help but ask with concern. Joyce took a glance at his fiancée, and his expression turned grave. "I still feel terrified to this day. I keep waking up from my dreams again and again. 5 days after the Alfalfa left Caesar Pier, we came across pirates, scary pirates. The only fortunate thing was that their leader's name was Nast, the pirate that calls himself the King of the Five Seas." Anna's father, Mr. Wayne, asked in shock. Although Joyce had already been there for half an hour, he did not volunteer details about his ordeal. He appeared to be fearful, perturbed, and uneasy. It was only after Anna returned and hugged him that he finally appeared to put it behind him. Yes, due to his declaration of being a descendant of the Solomon Empire, the King of the Five Seas, Nast didn't believe in killing captives. Hence, we were only robbed and didn't lose our lives. His subordinates even left us sufficient food, Joyce said as he recalled the ordeal. His body started to quiver, but he continued to describe his deepest and scariest nightmare. "I didn't lose much of my wealth. I believed that my misfortune was over, but as we continued towards our destination, a heated conflict erupted among the Alfalfa's passengers and crew, from disagreement to fighting to drawing revolvers and raising swords to kill each other. I saw nothing but blood during that period. One after another, people beside me fell with eyes opened, never to be closed. Their limbs, hearts, and intestines were scattered across the floors. Those of us who were unwilling to turn into savage beasts, the rational group, had nowhere to hide and nowhere to escape. We were surrounded by deep blue waves in the boundless ocean. Some wailed, some begged for mercy, some sold their bodies, but their heads were hung from the mast either way. Anna, I reeled in despair back then. I thought I would never see you again. Fortunately, in such a nightmare, there was still a hero. The captain took us to hide in the sturdy keel of the ship, and we relied on the stored water and food there until the maniacs reached their limits. Mr. Triss encouraged us, courageously leading us in an assault against those murderers. After an unforgettable bloody battle, we survived, but the Alfalfa strayed off course, and only a third of the original sailors remained. When he depicted the most horrible and darkest side of the human psyche, Joyce couldn't help but recall the hero, the man that called himself Triss. He had a round and amiable face. He was shy like a girl and enjoyed staying in a corner. Only people whom he was familiar with knew that he was a very good conversationalist. But it was such an unremarkable boy who stood in front of everyone with determination in the worst of days. "Oh, exalted steam, my poor Joyce, you went through such a heartbreaking ordeal. Thank God. Praise be to God, he prevented us from eternal separation." Tears welled up in Anna's eyes as she constantly dotted 3 points to form a triangle, the sacred emblem for steam and machinery. Joyce revealed a faint, pale smile. "This is the reward for our faith." The Alfalfa then went through storms, lost its course, and after surmounting one challenge after another, arrived at Enmat Harbor. Due to the bloodbath that had taken place on the boat, those of us that survived were held captive by the police and questioned. Separately, we didn't have a chance to send telegrams home to update our loved ones. When they released us this morning, I immediately borrowed some money from my friend and took the steam locomotive back. Thank God for letting me set foot on the land of Tingen again, allowing me to see all of you again. Then, he looked towards his fiancée in confusion. "Anna, when you saw me, I could feel your happiness and surprise, but I couldn't understand why you rushed towards the door so excitedly right after you got off the carriage. Heh, I had planned on giving you a huge surprise." Anna thought about what had happened earlier and continued in disbelief. "There's nothing to hide, Joyce. As I was worried about you, I went to the only divination club in Tingen City today for a divination. That fortune teller, the seer, told me. He said your fiancé has returned. He's in the house with a windmill." "What?" the Wayne couple and Joyce exclaimed simultaneously. Anna covered her face and shook her head. "I can barely believe it either, but it happened. Exalted steam. Perhaps there really are miracles in this world, Joyce. That seer asked me for your name, characteristics, address, and birth date. He told me he was going to do an astrolabe divination. Then, he asked me if the house with the toy windmill was yours or mine. When I confirmed it was mine, he said, 'Congratulations, Miss Anna. Mr. Joyce Meyer is currently a guest at your place. What he needs now are not questions, but consolation and a warm hug. God Joyce found it unbelievable and incomprehensible. Does he know me? Did someone send him a telegram? Could it be that he is familiar with the police in Enmat Harbor? No, that doesn't explain it. How did he know that I came to your place? How could he possibly know that you would seek a divination? Did you make an appointment? No, I made a selection at the last minute. Anna replied with a vacant-looking expression. Perhaps a good seer needs to be in control of vast amounts of information, even if it cannot be used anytime soon perhaps. That is the fascinating aspect of divination. Anna's father, Mr. Wayne, sighed and concluded, in the known history of more than 1,000 years and in the uncertain fourth epoch, divination has existed and has yet to disappear. I think there must be a reason for that. Joyce shook his head lightly and asked, what's that seer's name? Anna thought and said, Klein Moretti. In the reception lobby of the Divination Club, as Klein had spoken softly, Angelica knew not to go close, therefore. She only saw Anna leave as though she had lost her soul, wearing shock and confusion on her face. Angelica briskly walked to the sofa and asked out of curiosity, was the result good? She did not dare ask the actual result, afraid of violating the unspoken rule of fortune-tellers. Yet Klein nodded and took out 3 copper coins from his pocket. 1/8 of 1 soldi is 1.5 pennies. Right? Yes. Angelica looked at the copper coins and realized that one of them was a penny and 2 of them were halfpence. She quickly held it out and said, there's an additional halfpence. Klein smiled faintly and said, thank you for taking care of my customer. She gave me a tip, so it's only right I give you one. It's also to thank you for recommending me. He added in his heart, all right. Angelica felt an unknown fear of Klein, but since the reason was appropriate, she didn't refuse the offer. Klein returned to the meeting room, believing that there would be more people requesting his divinations. However, he did not receive a second customer by 5:40. It wasn't because the Divination Club's business was poor, but because most people had already chosen a fortune teller. They likely were recommended by others and had long determined whose services to hire. In short, him still lacking in reputation, Klein laughed at himself for using game terminology. He finished his 3rd cup of black tea, grabbed his top hat and silver-edged walking stick, and walked leisurely out of the meeting room. Angelica suddenly recalled Glass's instructions, and she quickly moved to intercept him. Mr. Moretti, when will you next visit the club? Mr. Glassy would like to thank you in person. I will come over whenever I'm free if fate permits us. He will definitely meet me, Klein replied, using the tone of a psychic charlatan, as though he was in character. Then, he left the club before Angelica could respond and took the public carriage home. When he stepped through the door, Klein found Benson reading the newspaper and Melissa putting together bits and pieces of gears, bearings, and springs in the evening sunlight. Good afternoon. Did Mrs. Shoud visit? Klein asked casually. Benson didn't put down his newspaper. Instead, he lifted his head. Mrs. Shoud's visit lasted 15 minutes. She brought some gifts, and she was very happy with the muffins and lemon cake that we prepared. She also invited us over whenever we have the chance to. She is a friendly, well-mannered lady. She knows how to carry a conversation very well too. The only problem is their belief in the Lord of Storms. They believe that girls shouldn't go to school but should be homeschooled instead. Melissa complained. It was obvious that she was very upset about it. Don't mind that, as long as she doesn't disturb us, she will still be a good neighbor. Klein comforted his sister, smiling. The Lone Kingdom was a multi-religious nation. Unlike the Frosak Empire in the north, which only believed in the god of combat, or the Fanapotter Kingdom in the south, which only worshipped Mother Earth, it was inevitable that the congregations from the 3 major churches of the Lord of Storms, the Evernight Goddess and the god of steam and machinery, had conflicts in beliefs and customs. After 1,000 years of this, they restrained each other, making coexistence possible. Okay, Melissa pursed her lips and redirected her focus onto the pile of parts again. After dinner, Klein continued revising history. Only when Melissa and Benson showered and returned to their rooms did he wash up, enter his bedroom, and lock his door. He needed to organize and summarize what he had learned and the problems that he encountered to prevent himself from forgetting or missing out any critical points. Only by doing so would he be able to respond to subsequent developments in the future with a clear train of thought. Klein flipped open his notebook, took out his pen, and started writing in Mandarin. Why is the key to digesting potions acting? Chapter 57. After pausing for a moment, Klein continued writing. The essence to resolving the problems with potions is through digestion, not simply controlling it. This can be understood in a straightforward manner. Merely controlling it would be akin to using the power of potions as an external tool. A tamed beast, no matter how well controlled, would ultimately not be a part of a person. The risk of it turning on them would be ever present. As for digestion, it is to view the downed potion as a part of them. They can break it down, fuse with it, absorb it, and form an overall system. I am currently certain of this point. What is more important is how acting helps in digestion. According to my experience as a seer today, I can make two hypotheses. They can be verified in the future. 1. Acting based on the potion's name changes the state of one's body, heart, and soul, making them closer to the remnant headstrong psyche of the potion's core. This results in resonance, which allows gradual assimilation and absorption. 2. The remnant headstrong psyche spirit of the magic medicine might be like a computer with complete defensive mechanisms. If one wishes to attack it and break it down, they will need to find a bug, security hole, or key. The name of the potion provides a corresponding clue. Thus, we can disguise our body, heart, and soul as part of the system through acting, and so we deceive the system's defenses. This line of thought is similar to Emperor Rosel's description. No matter which guess is right, there is no escaping the body, heart, and soul, for they are the only bridge between acting and the power of potions. Klein put down his pen and looked at the paragraph of text for a moment. He even wanted to thank the education he received from the Foodaholic Empire. No matter if he chose science or engineering for his further education, he was equipped with the basics of logical thought. Otherwise, there was no way he could have become a keyboard warrior, nor would he have been able to analyze his current situation. Acting might have an effect, but we'll have to wait and see for the specifics. Klein guessed. After that, he wrote down his second question. Why would a seer, being more well-learned and professional in the domain of mysticism, be lacking in means when it comes to direct combat? Wouldn't being more well-learned and professional make a seer even more powerful, giving them the ability to discover a way to defeat their enemies? The reasons could be: first, just like the web novels I've read in the past, I have transmigrated to a game world that has become reality. Thus, different jobs come with different specialties that have to be balanced against each other. But up to this point, there has been no sign of this world being a game, nor are there signs of mission-like developments. I'll put this reason on hold, but it's very unlikely. Second, the fundamental law of this world is balance. The Creator made this world with the core idea of balance. Third, potions at the same sequence level would have the same level of power. It is the most optimal state based on what our forefathers found out and summarized. Exceeding this level of power would make it easier for one to collapse and lose control. Below this level of power would make it such that one would not obtain the desired beyonder powers. Thus, under the situation of a balanced power level, being stronger in one area would naturally mean that one is weaker in another area. Fourth, everything in this world originated from the same source. They were formed by the remnants of the Creator. Thus, everything in this world is technically fragments of the Creator, and the fact that they have to complement each other would mean that there are inherent shortcomings to an individual. I am leaning towards the third and fourth reasons, but the latter stems from an unconfirmed myth and can only serve as a guide. Thus, I shall use the third reason as a guide, and try to ascertain it using my current knowledge and future studies. At this point, Klein had already written 2 full pages but did not stop. Instead, he penned a new question. From what I learned today, my luck enhancement ritual is categorized as a classic ritualistic magic. Similar kinds of ritualistic magic can be split into 3 parts, the first being a sacrifice that sparks the interest of a corresponding existence. The second is comprised of incantations specifically describing the existence in question. The third is using simple formatting and symbols to convey what one is asking for. Using this as a benchmark to analyze the luck enhancement ritual, there's an obvious problem. There is no third part. It has the sacrifice aspect in the placement of staple foods and walking a square in a counterclockwise manner with 4 steps. There is also a clear indication who the incantation is for, such as the phrase, "Blessings stem from the immortal Lord of heaven and earth," but all I did after was close my eyes and wait. There was nothing in the ritual that described the goal of enhancing my luck. In other words, the corresponding existence has no way of knowing what the so-called luck enhancement ritual is asking for and can only do as they see fit. Do as they see fit. What a troll! Isn't that darn quintessential divination and arcane arts of the Qin and Han dynasty too much of a troll? I must have had rocks in my head back then for trying. Klein stopped writing and took 2 deep breaths, trying hard to calm himself down. He spat out a foul breath and continued writing. I can consider redesigning the ritual, making it more complete. The motive of the ritual shall be to return to Earth, back to the world with my parents and friends. Then here comes the question. Was the entity truly acting on a whim? Or is there a deeper meaning to it? Also, Is the entity that the descriptive incantations point towards in this world the same one from Earth? If so, the difference in results between the first and second ritual could be explained as the entity doing as it wishes, but the results of me appearing above the gray fog during the second and third time, while being able to connect to justice and the hanged man has basically no differences. Why would that be so? If the fourth ritual tomorrow afternoon shows me the same stable results, that would mean that the effects are consistent. That would mean that the unknown entity has an agenda I do not know about. If that is the case, adding new descriptions and requests would not get me a clear response. In fact, it might complicate the ritual and result in adverse effects. Would the difference between the first ritual and the subsequent rituals, under the premise that the entity I called upon is the same one, mean that the results would be different depending on the world I'm in? It is like I am using a different interface. Then how can I design it to obtain my desired outcome? If I think that the entities behind the first and subsequent rituals are different, some of the questions can be perfectly answered, but similarly, the stability of the results in the second and third rituals would mean that the entity I am praying to has a certain agenda, and there is no way I can change that for the time being. The most important question is the identity of the entity that the ritual is directed. Where is he, and why doesn't he give me any clues or guidance? Could he be deep in the world of fog? Can I treat him as an entity in slumber, an entity that would give fixed responses if I give him a certain stimulus, but would not interfere with what I do other than that? Then I can introduce a different ritual as a stimulus and conclude whether the feedback I receive is regular. That way, I can find the correct method of returning, but the problem lies in the possibility that he is not asleep in that case. Such tests might result in terrifying outcomes. It might be really dangerous. The first attempt must be conducted with extreme caution. The design must not anger the being. What a headache. I need more knowledge. Klein sighed and gave a summary. Finally, he wrote down other miscellaneous items. There are always formless voices resonating in my ears, shouting Hornacis and, was it saying Phrygia or Phagria? Hornacis is the mountain range dividing the Lone Kingdom and the Intis Republic. Its main peak is 6,000 meters above sea level, according to the records in the Antigonus family's diary. There existed a nation of the Evernight in the fourth epoch. Is the nation of the Evernight related to the Evernight goddesses? There any connection between the two? Are they allies or enemies? Was the Antigonus family obliterated by the Church of the Evernight goddess due to nation of the Evernight? Did I hear murmurings coming from the diary, from the howls of the Antigonus family over 1 or 2,000 years? What then does Phrygia, Phlegria mean? An interesting question. To be able to leave behind such a diary, to leave behind sealed artifact 2-049 implies that the Antigonus family had possession of a relatively powerful Beyonder power. If that is so, which sequence did they possess? Was it complete or not complete? My realization that the diary is in the hands of Ray Bieber was a bit of a coincidence, but without any indication of it being arranged, could my fate really be tied up with that diary's? His ideas were penned on the pieces of paper. Klein tried his best to write down the events he had experienced and his guesses about their meaning. He wrote a total of 4 pages on both sides of each page. Rip. Klein suddenly tore off the 4 pages and read them from top to bottom, sometimes marking certain sections with his pen, adding a few sentences at other times. Time flew quickly. The crimson moon was temporarily covered by dark clouds. Klein picked up the pocket watch on the table, snapped it open and looked at the time. He put down the watch and took out a box of matches from his drawer. He lit one and brought it close to the 4 pages of notes. The orange flame ignited the edges of the paper and quickly spread. Klein placed the notes on top of the wooden dustbin and watched the ashes drop. He then released his fingers, allowing the papers to fall. In just 10 seconds, everything had disappeared. All that was left was the still swirling ash and the charred bottom of the dustbin. As there was Emperor Rosel's secret diary in this world, Klein did not dare leave behind any evidence that he knew how to write. Chineseafold Neil and the rest discovered the 4 pieces of paper he wrote. He would have no idea how to explain the matter, and while writing the confidential questions, Klein was worried that the one paying attention to his dreams would be able to see and decipher the contents no matter which language he used, be it Lone, Ancient Faisak, or Hermes. Therefore, he could only write notes in Chinese to organize and summarize. After he was done with the task, he burned the notes to leave no traces, and precisely because there was no way of saving. He set up a plan for himself. He would do this summary once a week just in case he forgot anything. As he watched the ashes fall, Klein pulled out a white piece of paper. He wrote the title, "To my respected mentor." He wanted to write to senior associate. Professor Quentin Cohen asking if he had any relevant historical information about the main peak of the Hornaces mountain range. Chapter 58. The next day, a Monday morning, Klein, who had the day off, didn't leave home. Instead, he gave Melissa his letter directed to mentor Cohen Quentin and more than enough money to buy stamps. He entrusted her with the job of mailing the letter at the post office near the Tingen Technical School where she studied. After breakfast, he slept in to make up for the lack of sleep caused by the previous night's work. He only woke up because of his stomach's grumblings close to noon. He heated up some leftovers from the night before and ate them with a loaf of rye bread. Klein grabbed a newspaper and entered the bathroom on the second floor. Whenever he did that, he couldn't help but sigh at the lack of a cell phone. After about 7 or 8 minutes, he left the toilet refreshed and washed his hands. He then returned to his bedroom and locked his door. Klein drew the curtains, lit up the gas lamp, and cogitated for half an hour. After practicing his spiritual vision, spirit dowsing, and dowsing rod for half an hour, he spent another hour mentally reviewing the mysticism knowledge he had gained recently. After doing that, he ripped up the old newspaper and crumpled them into a few balls. He wrote on them, moonflower candle, full moon essence oil, and other names of materials. He followed the prescribed steps of ritualistic magic in his head in order to master every little detail until he was entirely familiar with it. He didn't intend to try ritualistic magic because it was both a waste of materials and also easily attracted danger. He repeated again and again until he picked up his silver pocket watch patterned with vine leaves and took a glance. He realized that it was 2:45. He considered for a few seconds and brought the scraps of old newspapers to the kitchen on the first floor to burn them. While doing so, he made sure he was in an optimal state of mind as he prepared for the tarot gathering, locking his bedroom door once again. Klein didn't wait for the clock to strike 3. He planned to enter the area above the gray fog ahead of time. He wanted to seize the chance to explore the place thoroughly. As Klein stood in an empty spot in his room and started walking counterclockwise, he suddenly worried that Justice and the Hanged Man had yet to enter a suitable environment. He thought of a particular matter. Would they be disturbed or discovered? He had previously mentioned to allow Justice and the Hanged Man to apply for leave ahead of time if they needed to be absent from the gathering for some reasons, such as being unable to find time alone or unexpected circumstances. It would have been an almost unsolvable problem for Klein in the past. There was no way he could build an entire server-based internet by hand in a different world, right? Any technology beyond the telegram could expose him, but now he had suddenly found inspiration from ritualistic magic. Ritualistic magic borrows the powers of others by seeking the help of different existences. Similar incantations would make it clear who it is directed to in the beginning, such as the Evernight Goddess or the Lady of Crimson. It would be a description of the unknown and clandestine existences. Then, can I amend the chant and redirect the beginning of the chant towards myself? Directed at me. This way, even if Justice and the Hanged Man conduct the ritual in different locations, I would receive their messages. Klein suddenly felt fresh insight as he began analyzing the likelihood of the method working. There are 2 difficulties. First, I am not an incredibly strong high-level sequencer. Even if the description of the incantation was directed to me, I couldn't possibly receive the request. Second, how can I ensure that the description of the chant is directed at me accurately and doesn't stray away and hit some other unknown existence that fits the description? That would be incredibly dangerous. Klein paced back and forth, deep in thought for a possible workable solution. He went in circles with silent footsteps. Then, he naturally linked the matter with the mysterious world of the gray fog. Even if I can't receive the message, that doesn't mean the gray fog can't. Its connection with the crimson stars can drag a person into the space directly, regardless of where they are in the physical world. I could consider tying myself to the mysterious space together during the directed description. In accordance with this train of thought, even though I might not immediately receive the request when the other party is holding the ritual, I will still be able to see the corresponding messages whenever I enter the gray fog. To put it simply, it is the difference between being online and offline on an instant messaging system. Klein became more excited the more he thought. He felt that his idea was worth a try. What kind of description could be used to precisely direct a message to me and to the gray fog world? He started thinking about the actual details. In fact, he had an incantation that would definitely work. It was none other than the lone translation of blessing stem from the celestial worthy of heaven and earth. But herein lies the problem. He would lose control of the gray fog and lose his leading role. He could only exclude it. Fool from an alternate world? No way, it is quite accurate, and there is almost no other existence that fits the criteria, but it would expose my biggest secret. Klein thought of one incantation after another, but he crossed off each one. After about 7 to 8 minutes, he finally decided on the description of the first paragraph that directed to him. The fool that doesn't belong to this era. It was obviously not accurate enough. Therefore, Klein quickly added, the mysterious ruler above the gray fog. The combination of the two lines practically limited it to him. Furthermore, he had tied the gray fog to him. It's still a little short. I cannot eliminate the possibility that there are multiple spaces and rulers above the gray fog. I cannot eliminate the fact that the description might be directed to the spirit world. Klein creased his eyebrows and planned on making it more certain. He thought for a full minute and finally decided on the last part of the description. The king of yellow and black who wields good luck. It shared a similar meaning to blessing stem from the exalted the arch of heaven and earth one. If the incantation purely depended on that part of the description, it might end up being directed away and provoking unknown dangerous existences. But with the first two lines as a limitation, and his experience of arriving above the fog through a similar incantation, he believed that the target's description could result in a perfect lock on. Klein wasn't sure if casting the ritualistic magic with those three descriptions would be effective, but he was definite that it would not attract the attention of another existence. It wouldn't throw Justice and the hanged man into danger. Klein heaved out a long sigh and recited the incantation that he had decided upon. The fool that doesn't belong to this era. You are the mysterious ruler above the gray fog. You are the king of yellow and black who wields good luck. He nodded his head slightly and took out his pocket watch to confirm the time. It's already 2:58. Without further thought, Klein put away his pocket and entered cogitation. Soon he chanted and took 4 steps counterclockwise to form a square. The most ferocious noises and heart-stirring roars were heard once again. He felt the headache that was even harder to deal with than the pain of consuming the seer potion. The pain was not a sharp pain that tore through his head. It was a throbbing pain that made him manic and irrational. It was a pain that left him in chaotic confusion. Klein controlled himself using cogitation and tried hard to ignore the voices. The muttering and murmurs receded like the tides. His body became ethereal along with his spirituality. Everything seemed to float. The boundless gray fog appeared before his sight, the crimson stars at varying distances from him, just like pairs of eyes. Above the gray fog stood the palace, lofty and towering like the home of a giant. It was as though it had been there for millions of years. All Klein did was will it, and he disappeared from where he was, reappearing at the seat of honor at the long bronze table with 22 high-back chairs. The effect of the ritual is definitely fixed, Klein muttered. He tapped his glabella gently and allowed the fog to engulf him, once thicker than before. According to the description of the hanged man, if Justice had become a spectator, it would be best not to reveal any of his tics before her without any time for exploring. Klein extended his right hand and formed an invisible connection, connecting him to the 2 familiar crimson stars. On the roaring blue waves of the Sonia Sea, an ancient sailboat was sailing with the wind. Alger Wilson locked himself in the captain's cabin and made Ghost Ship provide him the best protection. He opened the pocket watch before him and laid it next to the brass sextant. The clock was ticking without joy as it exuded nervousness. When the hour hand, minute hand, and second hand aligned, there was an explosion of crimson before Alger Wilson. It ignored the layers and layers of protection he had placed over himself. Sigh. His sigh reverberated across the captain's room. Backlund, Empress Borough. Audrey Hall laid against a down-feather pillow and glanced at the yellow paper in her hand. Her gem-like eyes looked like they had 2 souls spiraling slowly in them. Her gaze was calm and cool, as if she were waiting for a play to begin. As the crimson red erupted, she looked at herself being swallowed with complete detachment. Above the gray fog, in the magnificent palace on the ancient and mottled long bronze table, Klein, who had already activated his spiritual vision, looked over. When Audrey Hall's figure began to form, he was not surprised to see that the colors deep in her aura had blended together. It became pure and serene, like a lake that was clear and reflective. She really did become a beyonder. Klein was just about to move his gaze away when he suddenly saw the chair belonging to Miss Justice change. The bright stars on the back of the chair moved swiftly, forming an illusory constellation that didn't belong to reality. That constellation was familiar to Klein because it was one of the symbols of mysticism. It was a symbol that represented Giant Dragon. Spectator. Giant Dragon. Klein restrained himself from shaking his head and looked over at the back of the hanged man's chair. Typically speaking, it was impossible for him to see the back of the chair from his angle, but this was where he was in control. Everything presented itself according to his will. The constellation on the back of the chair had not changed, but since Klein had grasped the basics of mysticism, he wasn't as ignorant as before. He could recognize that it was the symbol of Windstorm, sailor, keeper of the sea. Windstorm, that's reasonable. The color deep in the hanged man's aura is much purer than it was. Has he leveled up? Oh yeah, what about the symbol behind my chair? Klein suppressed his impulse to look, rapped the edge of the long table thrice just like before, and smiled as he said, "Congratulations, Miss Justice, you are a Beyonder now." He can tell straight away. Audrey was stunned and smiled faintly. "Thank you, Mr. Fool." "And thank you, Mr. Hanged Man, that was much faster than I thought," Alger Wilson said honestly. Klein didn't continue the topic but tapped his glabella and said with a smile, "Lady, sir, have either of you found Roselle's diary?" Chapter 59. Upon hearing the fool's question, Audrey did not immediately answer like in the past. Instead, she widened her crystalline eyes and glanced at the hanged man with a scrutinous attitude. Alger subconsciously subdued his body motions. After a few seconds of silence, he said, "I found 2 pages of the Emperor Roselle's diary and have memorized their contents. I have 1 page." Audrey, whose vision was obscured by the fog, said as though she was removed from the conversation, "Pretty good." Klein did not allow his joy or his disappointment be noticed from his voice. He felt joy as there were 3 full pages, but disappointment also because there were only 3 pages. Their initial search for the diary was definitely easier, for all they had to do was ask through their connections and channels they were already familiar with. Collecting the pages would become more and more difficult as time went on, as it would involve more and more elements. "Should we express them now?" Audrey inquired with a calm tone. "Yes." Klein simply nodded. He maintained his posture without any change. He had to be cautious in front of a spectator as he finished his sentence. Pieces of yellowish-brown goatskin parchment and dark red fountain pens appeared in front of Audrey and Alger. The 2 of them picked up their pens and started to recall the symbols they had seen. They also infused the emotions of expressing them out, silently. Lines of text appeared on the goatskin, some of them appeared proper, some delicate, others slanted. In a mere minute, the contents that Alger and Audrey had forcibly memorized were all written. Klein willed the 3 pieces of parchment into his hands. He gave the pages a cursory glance and realized that some of the grammar was wrong. There were also missing and wrong words in the content. But experimentation had proved that incorrect sequencing of words to some extent did not affect the overall comprehension of Chinese. Klein was also not afraid of missing words, since he often read web novels filled with censored asterisks. April, I stood at the bow of Black King and stretched my arms, saying to Grimm and Edwards, "My fortune is yours for the taking, but you'll have to find it first." I left everything I own at the ends of the fog sea. They did not understand my humor at all and even asked if I really had other treasures. How boring. You can't be my 4 horsemen of the apocalypse if you keep it that. April 11, I discovered a nameless island that was not on a safe sea route. There are a good number of extraordinary animals there. I prefer calling them extraordinary beings. It feels more impressive that way. Other than that, there are several weird creatures on the island. I believe that if Darwin had been transmigrated there's no way he could have written his theory of evolution. April 15, Grimm has suddenly become a little odd. Has he been infected by something? When did the Emperor Roselle, who was born in the Intis Kingdom, set off on a voyage? The Fog Sea should be the sea west of the Intis Republic. Yeah, I need to use historical information from the library to cross-reference this. Klein quickly finished reading a page, casting his gaze to the back of the piece of paper. At this point, he no longer hid the fact that he could decipher Emperor Roselle's secret symbols, since this ability fitted the persona and status of the fool. Audrey and Alger did not speak. They waited silently, as if unsurprised by such a revelation. In fact, they even believed that it was only right. October 2 ND, they actually wanted me to marry Matilda from the Abel family without even consulting me first. Heavens, I have not even met her. No, I must decline. Even if I were to run away from home and survive on my own and suffer the vicissitudes of life, I must fight against this marriage. October 5 Miss Matilda is really pretty. October 6 her personality and her demeanor is just my type. I am starting to look forward to the marriage. Hey, Emperor, where is your integrity? Klein leaned back into his seat. Not allowing his emotions to pass through the fog, he realized that Gustav did not write in his diary every day early on. Most of the time, he would only write in the diary when there were certain events that he needed to lampoon, record, or to vent his emotions. He shifted his gaze downward. Klein looked at the last sentence of this page. October 9, they actually called me the son of the steam. I like that very much. Klein was a little disappointed that the information in the first 2 pages was of little value. But he did not turn sullen. He moved the 3rd page to the top. This page had content written on both sides of the paper. May 21 St. The Church of the God of Craftsmanship gave me 2 choices, 2 beginning sequence pathways. One of them is the Savant. It is a complete sequence pathway they possess. The other is Mystery, Prior, which they obtained from the Moses ascetic order. But it lacks the higher sequences. May 22 and my choice was easy. Savant. The Savant has a complete sequence pathway. Although wielding more information on mysticism can aid my return home, the problem is that if I am not strong enough, there is a need to acquire external help for transmigration. And I do not know if this external entity would be good or bad, benevolent or malicious. I cannot control it, and thus it could be very dangerous. In that case, why not strengthen myself and return by relying on my own powers? Thus, the complete sequence was the most important factor in my considerations. May 23 RD, I have become a savant with the power of the potion. I actually recalled all the knowledge I had learned in the past, such as physics, chemistry, etc. I have not only recalled the knowledge, but I understand it more deeply, as well as its possible applications and implications. Haha. This is a job specially tailored for a transmigrator like me from an alternate realm. I will be able to express my advantage to the greatest extent. I have to say that if I were to return in my present state to the 3rd year of high school, I would definitely become top scholar. If I could further specialize in an area, it wouldn't even be too hard for me to become a scientist. May 26th. I am enjoying my status as a savant. Something odd worth mentioning. When I address myself as a savant, doing things that are in line with this role, the murmurings that drive me crazy become considerably softer. I have also been able to control my occasional temper outbursts. I have also recalled the matter regarding the diary. Is this the acting that the mysterious Mr. Zeradel mentioned? This could be key in resolving the side effects posed by potions. As Klein read the diary page, he had a deep realization that there was a fundamental difference between how he and the Emperor Roselle did things. For example, regarding the matter of returning home, Klein considered grasping in-depth knowledge of mysticism to avoid risks and accomplish his goal, while Emperor Roselle preferred to rely on himself and face the risk. I have to say, I envy people like that sometimes. Perhaps everyone yearns for something they do not possess. Of course, I also have to consider strengthening myself. Both of these are important, Klein thought, sighing a little. The description provided by Emperor Roselle about acting instilled Klein with confidence that the conclusion he made about acting yesterday was more or less correct. He put the 3 diary pages down, looked up at Justice and the Hanged Man. He smiled and said, "My apologies. I was too absorbed in reading them." Audrey calmed the envy in her heart and smiled faintly. "I can understand. I hope to one day be able to exchange information about the diary's contents. That will require a price." Klein smiled and glanced at Justice, then swept his gaze towards the silent Hanged Man. Audrey put her palms together and placed them in front of her. "Mr. Fool, Mr. Hanged Man, I have 3 questions to ask. If you think that the answers warrant a high price, tell me what you want. I will try my best to seek it." "No problem," Alger answered succinctly. Klein nodded and leaned back further, making himself comfortable. Audrey thought for a few seconds and said, "The first question is, what does acting really mean? I realize that the remnant psyche in the potion has minute effects on me. Is that because I've been acting as a spectator all this while?" Alger did not speak. Instead, he looked at the fool. As though waiting for him to give an answer, Klein rubbed his finger on the edge of the table and said in a relaxed tone, "Let me explain this with an analogy. Imagine the core powers of your potion as a tightly guarded castle. The remnants of the psyche that can cause a lashback resides within that castle. Our goal is to get rid of it and become the true master of the castle. There are 2 ways we can do that. The first is to forcefully invade the castle. There is no guarantee that this will work, and you will most definitely injure yourself unless you can suppress it with absolute power, but of course, we are not equipped to do that. The second way is to get the owner of the castle to extend an invitation. This invitation can allow us to slide through the scrutiny of the guards and infiltrate the castle. We can then easily finish off the enemies. But the problem lies in the fact that this invitation specifies the facial features and characteristics of the guest. Thus, we have to disguise ourselves and act as the guest. Do you understand?" Alger immediately asked, as if he had anticipated this reply. "Then the aforementioned invitation is the name of the potion sequence?" "That's right," Klein answered with great affirmation. Audrey froze for a moment, having the sudden feeling that she completely understood what acting meant. She immediately exited her spectator state due to her excitement. She praised in joy. What an exceptional method. I think it fits your title. Its style is very compatible with The Fool. I would never have believed that acting would have such an effect. Luckily, I have been acting as a spectator the past few days." She paused for a moment before saying, "I think that this is a very valuable answer. My heart is not at ease accepting it for nothing. Mr. Fool, what do you need in exchange?" "Of course, I still remember that I owe you a page of Emperor Roselle's diary, more pages of Roselle's diary, or..." Klein paused for a moment. He had wanted to get information about the sequence regarding the seer, but felt that such a low-level request would ruin the mystical image of the fool. Thus, he chose to give up on it and planned to ask them discreetly some other day. "I just advanced recently and have yet to completely digest the seer potion," he consoled himself and added on without expression, "anything regarding the Antigonus family, even if I'm already aware of them myself." Alger remained silent for a few seconds. He looked at the top of the long bronze table for a moment before slowly opening his mouth. "Mr. Fool, I believe I can pay you back immediately with the information you requested just now." Chapter 60. "No problem." Klein tried to maintain his unchanging deep tone. He rested his left elbow on the armrest of his chair and supported his forehead slightly with his fingers, posing as though he was listening calmly. Alger deliberated over his words and said, "The Antigonus is an ancient family. Their history can be traced back to the Cataclysm epic before the fourth epic and is related to the second blasphemy slate." "The second blasphemy slate? There's a second blasphemy slate? How many are there?" Klein's pupils shrank, and he nearly changed his posture. According to what the Hanged Man and Justice have said previously, the blasphemy slate contained the profound mysteries of the 22 paths of the divine. There are 2 of such important items, or even more. 22 paths of the divine. Sequences and pathways? Could these 2 nouns mean the same thing? Every complete sequence pathway leads straight to the throne of the divine? At that instant, the description of the second blasphemy slate gave Klein numerous thoughts. He believed that if not for the thick grayish-white fog concealing him, his emotional reaction would probably have been discovered by Miss Spectator. As for the words Cataclysm epic, he was no stranger to that term as a historian. It was the name of the third epic. After his recent revision, Klein even knew that the third epic was separated into 2 eras: the Glorious Era and the Cataclysm Era. A second blasphemy slate? Audrey plainly revealed her ignorance on the matter. Before she calmed her emotions, she returned to her spectator state. "Nice question." Klein secretly cheered for Miss Justice. It was a question inconvenient for him to ask. As the fool, Alger stole a glance at the fool and noticed that his posture remained the same, nor did he make a sound. Hence, he thought and answered, "The first blasphemy slate appeared in the Dark Epoch, which is the second epoch where we humans struggled to survive under the protection of gods. The second blasphemy slate appeared at the end of the third epoch. It could even be said that its appearance symbolized the end of the Cataclysm epic. The content of the 2 blasphemy slates is kept secret by the 7 major churches. I only know bits and pieces of it. I only know that they involve the pathways to godhood, but I am not sure of the differences between them. Was the blasphemy slate that Emperor Roselle saw the first or the second?" Audrey asked curiously. Upon hearing that, Klein recalled what Alger said about the potion names during the first gathering. He said that the names of the sequence potions were derived from the blasphemy slate. Similarly, Captain had also mentioned that the formation and completion of the potion system was thanks to the birth of the blasphemy slate. That indirectly confirms that the pathways to godhood are the sequence pathway. Klein answered his earlier question silently. Then Alger simply replied, "The second one." The glint in Audrey's eyes diminished and she returned to her spectator state. She did not continue asking questions. Instead, all she did was focus her gaze on the Hanged Man. It was obvious that her scrutiny made Alger uncomfortable, but he suppressed the emotions within him. He lowered his voice and continued, "During the Solomon dynasty in the 4th epoch, although the Antigonus family was considered an illustrious part of the aristocracy, they didn't do anything very memorable until they supported the establishment of the Tudor Empire. They then stood right in the middle of the stage of northern continent in that period. Antigonus, Ammon, Abraham, Jacob, and others were illustrious names of the human kingdom. However, after the War of the 4 Sovereigns, the Blood Emperor from the Tudor Empire perished. They fell from the top of their pedestal and are now hunted by the 7 gods. I am not sure about the actual process, but I do know that the Antigonus family was destroyed at the hands of the Church of the Evernight Goddess. Mr. Fool, if you'd like to know more, I am afraid that you can only obtain the information from the Church of the Evernight Goddess or from the few ancient secret organizations. You know which few I am referring to. I don't." Klein nodded while feeling bitter inside. "Okay. The secret order is one, Captain, and old Neil mentioned the Moses ascetic order. I wonder if the psychology alchemists count." While he mentally checked off the candidates, Alger provided him with the last bits of information. I similarly have no idea which sequence pathways the Antigonus family held. There are only two adjectives that appear repetitively in the descriptions of the Antigonus family, and those are strange and terrifying, strange and terrifying. Thinking back to the notebook, the original Klein and his classmates, and what happened to Ray Bieber's mother, it really is aptly worded. Klein continuously rapped the edge of the long table with the tip of his finger a couple of times. Then, he slowly began to speak. Very well, I am satisfied with the payment. The reason he continuously rapped the long table lightly with his fingers was to emphasize the action, to make Justice and the hangman believe that he had a habit of rapping in order to conceal the fact that the same motion was used to activate and deactivate his spirit vision. It's my pleasure. Alger did not say anything else. Audrey took a look at the hangman and then the fool. She smiled faintly and said, "Then, I shall ask the second question. What is the name of the subsequent potion for spectator? Where can I find the clues? I'd also like to ask so straightforwardly, but different choices lead to different difficulties." Klein did not speak but cast his gaze towards the hanged man. Alger remained silent for a few seconds before saying, "I'll answer the question for free because I led you on this pathway. The subsequent sequence for spectator is sequence 8, telepathic. The ancient name of sequence 7 is psychoanalyst but is called psychiatrist now. This is what I found out from a member of the psychology alchemists. I think they should have quite a number of potion formulas for this pathway. Psychology alchemists. Spirit medium Daly was rather approving of their theory, but Captain thought of them as evil and crazy. Klein listened while in deep thought. "Do you know the whereabouts of that particular psychology alchemists member?" asked Audrey as her eyes beamed with joy. Be it telepathic or psychiatrist, both names appealed to her aesthetics. Alger gave a rare laugh. "I do. He's immersed in the seas around Sonia Island. I sank him with my own hands. If you would like to look for the psychology alchemists, I have to apologize since I severed the clues." He was not worried that Justice would find his identity through his description because he did that on his own, out of the public eye. Sank. Audrey was at a loss how to reply or what expression to wear. She drew a deep breath and suddenly failed to maintain her spectator state. She asked bashfully, "The third question, I'm saying if a normal animal were to drink a sequence 9 potion, what would happen? What kind of a question is that?" Klein tapped his glabella unnoticeably with his finger that was supporting his forehead. Very quickly, he saw the changes in color and noticed that Audrey's emotions had turned frantic, nervous, and a little ashamed. Could she have done something that stupid? Klein was astounded but didn't find it strange. After the past 2 gatherings, he was certain that Miss Justice was quite an airhead. The hanged man, Alger, was obviously dumbfounded as well. He took a while to reply. "Normal animals do not have the brains of humans. They wouldn't be able to learn cogitation in a timely manner. Therefore, it would most likely lead to immediate death or a breakdown into a monster. However, if they survived the initial ingestion of the potion, they should become an extraordinary creature. If the potion has the ability to enhance their intelligence, they can even become smarter." "All right." Audrey breathed out a silent sigh and nodded while saying with a relaxed tone, "I have no other questions." Alger considered for a moment and did not mention matters regarding the Aurora Order or the listener. Similarly, he shook his head and said, "Nor do I. I have something." Klein didn't change his posture but said with a smile, "It will require your cooperation." He had yet to turn off his spirit vision and he immediately saw that the hanged man was showing signs of nervousness, while Miss Justice was too simple-minded to show fear or carefulness. Before they could reply, Klein comforted them. "Don't worry, it's trivial. If it succeeds, it will be beneficial to you, so I wouldn't be paying extra remuneration." "Go ahead." Audrey instinctively entered the spectator state, but she couldn't see through the thick gray fog engulfing the fool. "As you will," Alger replied, steadying himself. Klein moved his fingers and smiled when he said, "Previously, I said that we would do some experiments to enable you to ask for a leave of absence. That way, you do not have to worry if you have to be somewhere inappropriate on a Monday afternoon. That's our wish." Audrey loosened her tightly knitted eyebrows. Alger thought and said, "What do you need us to do?" "You could try a piece of ritualistic magic during your free time. It need not be too formal as long as you are in an environment that won't be disturbed. Put 4 brand new candles on an altar, placed on 4 corners respectively. It's best if they are candles with a sandalwood scent. Put a loaf of white bread near the candle on the top left corner, a bowl of Fanapotter noodles near the candle on the top right corner, paella by the candle on the bottom left corner, and a desi pie by the candle on the bottom right corner. Use a silver knife to make a sealed spiritual environment." Klein described his modified version of the luck enhancement ritual and taught Miss Justice how to create a spiritual environment for free. To be frank, as the ritual was targeted at himself. Klein believed that the former part, which was intended to attract the interest of an entity, could be omitted completely. However, he still worked hard to make the procedure seem important, of course. It didn't comply with what old Neil taught about gods being second and oneself being third. Mix moon flowers, gold mint, slumber flowers, fingered citron, and rock rose together, then distill it, extract it for its essential oil. Then pour a drop onto each candle. Audrey listened with piqued interest as she recorded all that he said. When he was done, she asked, "What about the incantation?" "Mr. Fool, what's the corresponding incantation?" Alger stopped writing with the fountain pen in his hand as well. He turned his head to look at the fool. Klein, who was immersed in the gray fog, tapped the edge of the long table with his finger lightly and said calmly and monotonously in Hermes, "The fool that doesn't belong to this era. You are the mysterious ruler above the gray fog. You are the king of yellow and black who wields good luck."